This year marks me keeping chameleons for 5 years, which is crazy to think about that I've been doing this for this long, and that Neptune's 5 years old. But I wanted to share with you guys, from one keeper to another, 5 things I've learned in the 5 years I've been keeping chameleons. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So I want to do an entire video just on this topic, but I think keeping multiple chameleons is easier than keeping one chameleon. Now, I know people have mixed opinions, and obviously there's limits to it. I have 3 chameleons. That seems very manageable. If you had like 50 chameleons, that's a whole different story. It would be way harder than just keeping one chameleon. But I remember when I had Neptune, and that was it. Then I got my other chameleons, and then how that all changed. And I feel like having multiple chameleons is a little more manageable than just one. And I know that sounds weird, but really like buying the bugs and being able to buy them in bulk and being able to feed them to all of your chameleons, having your mist king set up and have it be able to run across multiple enclosures, that's pretty doable. And like I said, I can go into more details in a future video of like the pros and cons to keeping multiple chameleons, but I thought for sure it'd be way harder to keep multiple chameleons versus just one, but really hasn't been that much different. So that's the first thing that I've learned. Second thing is you'll become an educator, and by that I mean you'll constantly be teaching people about chameleons, because one of the first things people ask me when they find out I have pet chameleons is like, oh, do you keep them all in the same enclosure? And you're like, no, keep them separate, can't see each other, they're territorial. I'm like, oh, okay. Do they change colors? And you're like, yes, but not in the way that people usually think they do. Like there's like, you're constantly having to educate people about chameleons because there's just so much wrong information, especially when it comes to pop culture and chameleons and movies and all that kind of good stuff. So that's something that I've had to do over the years. Additionally, you're constantly learning about plants, lighting, bugs. There's so much more to keeping a chameleon than just the chameleon itself. And I've learned way too much about UVB, supplements, plants, and everything else. The third thing that kind of surprised me, especially when I was first getting into chameleons, is that chameleons are very predictable and they are creatures of habit. And now if you're just getting into chameleons, you're like, what? Like, they're not predictable at all. But I promise you, after 5 years of keeping a chameleon, you'll know their sleeping spots, you'll know their routines, you'll know their habits, you'll know when they want to come out of their enclosure, you'll know their favorite bugs, you'll know their body language, and they are so predictable. Like, I know exactly how to get my chameleons out of their enclosure based off of their body language and behavior. I know when things are off with them based off of color, temperament, how much energy levels they have, things like that. So that's something that was kind of surprising, because when I first got into chameleons, I was like, oh my gosh, they're doing this. What does that mean? They're doing this. What does that mean? But over time, you learn and you'll realize they are pretty predictable. So the fourth thing that I've learned is that chameleons are hardier than we give them credit for. Chameleons have the reputation in the hobby of being advanced reptiles, of dying easily, and just like whenever people will hear that I have chameleons, especially when I go to reptile expos, like, oh, I could never, right? Like, or I had one and it died, you just hear all the horror stories. But I feel like if you set them up correctly, chameleons aren't that hard. I don't know, I've been doing it for 5 years, and I obviously there's a big learning curve. I'm not discounting that. I'm just saying I think they're harder than we give them credit for. So like if your basking temperature is 84 degrees versus 85, like they'll be okay. If your humidity is 49% to 50%, like they'll be okay. They can handle a lot more than we give them credit for. And going off of that, I think the reason why chameleons get the reputation that they do is not because that they are advanced or difficult, because just like any reptile, you're gonna have to learn about UVB, supplements, proper enclosure. That's not unique to chameleons, that's for any reptile. But the margin for error for a chameleon is significantly smaller than the margin for error for other reptiles. So you can't afford to cut corners with the chameleon. You can't afford to get the wrong UVB and the wrong supplements. It has to be right from the beginning. If not, that's when your chameleon will get sick and start to have issues. So I think if we kind of reframe how we think about it, and again, this has been over the years of me keeping chameleons, I've kind of had this realization myself. It's not that they are advanced or difficult, it's just that the margin for error and messing up is much smaller. And the fifth and final thing that I've kind of learned over the years is that tameness and temperament has nothing to do with this species. And I briefly talked about this in my last video, panthers versus veiled chameleons, so feel free to check that out if you haven't already. But Neptune is a panther chameleon, and panthers have the reputation of being like very chill and calm, you know, chameleons. If you've met Neptune, if you've seen any of my other videos, you'll know he is a spicy little firecracker. And just like how veils have been known to be, you know, a little bit more defensive, they will be totally chill veiled chameleons. And I've just seen through my own experiences and then hearing about other people that tameness has nothing to do with this species. So if you're deciding which chameleon to get, I say go with the one that looks coolest to you and fits for the environment that you're able to provide for them, between their humidity and temperatures, and then, I mean, honestly, which one you think you'll enjoy. So there you guys have it. Those are 5 things. Let me know if you want me to do another one of these. I didn't really get into the care nitty-gritties of like things I've learned as far as like UVB or supplements or things like that, and I'm happy to go into that. This is just kind of high-level trends I've seen within the hobby over the last 5 years. But as always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Leave any questions or comments down below. Feel free to subscribe so you don't post a new video. Follow Neptune and all my chameleons on social media at Neptune the Chameleon. Feel free to check out my website, neptunethechameleon.com, where you can find even more information about chameleons and how to care for them. Always, thank you so much for watching. Oh, and if you want some cool Neptune the Chameleon merch, like this cute little crew neck, ding ding, feel free to check out my merch shop. That's also linked on my website. And thank you to anyone who decides to support me through purchasing some merch. Always, thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Follow Neptune and all my chameleons at social media. I feel like I nailed that.